Love music, live sport with Alex Horsburgh on Rock Sport Radio.
Tonight at 5 p.m, viewers will be treated to ITV's reboot of World of Sport Wrestling. 33 years after the show last aired, World of Sport is back showcasing some of the best British wrestlers on a show that ITV hopes will be the next big thing in Saturday night entertainment. I'm now joined on the line by author of Have a Good Week, Till Next Week. Ken Walton said that. But this is John Lister. John, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. For those who don't know, what was World of Sport Wrestling and why was it so popular?
So World of Sport was a sort of magazine programme. It was the ITV version of Grandstand and would have sort of more kind of working class, more outlandish kind of sports. And the big attraction on it, the one that got the biggest ratings and was sort of the anchor of the show, was professional wrestling, which was very much part of the culture at the time, and was presented in the same way as kind of any other sport. So the same people who'd go and film boxing or would film horse racing come along and film these professional wrestling shows, which were a mix of sports, entertainment, theatre, drama, sort of anything you could sort of have an interest in viewing. There's something of that in professional wrestling, and it was really part of a culture and has been missing for these sort of 3 decades. So it's wonderful to see it back on the air.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, John, because I was brought up in the era of World of Sport and Dickie Davis and all the rest of it. Did World of Sport feature these sports, mention these sports, because they didn't have the same budget as the BBC?
I think there was something in that, and also the fact that because it was a commercial station with advert breaks between the various sports, they needed something that was going to appeal to sort of particular demographics, which was part of the reason for its success, and unfortunately at the end was part of the reason for its demise when Greg Dyke took over as head of ITV and decided he wanted to take the channel up market, appeal to more lucrative advertisers and go for a more middle-class audience, which was one of the sort of reasons he gave for taking the wrestling off air.
And of course, back in the day, it was people like Jackie Pallo, Mick McManus, and then later on, Giant Haystacks, Big Daddy. I mean, these guys, it was sports entertainment in a way, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the term that was coined by the World Wrestling Entertainment in the United States for big American promotion, partly actually to get out of paying the taxes that were applied to genuine sporting contests. But it really was. It was this kind of an amazing package of sort of crowd appeal, big characters, but also the British style was kind of very renowned for being very kind of athletic, having sort of real roots in amateur wrestling and what's called catch wrestling, which involves sort of going both for pinfalls and for submissions and would be sort of done in the gyms around the country. And for many years when wrestling was on the air, you either had to have an amateur background or you would have to go and sort of pass an audition where you'd wrestle for real to show that you sort of knew what you're doing. You could look credible and kind of get over to an audience that way. Or another route into it was actually the wrestling booths, which would take place at fairgrounds and sort of at seasides as well, where you'd have wrestlers who would be taking on members of the audience. So you'd have a wrestling booth and a boxing booth, and you sort of, you really had to kind of not only know your skills there, have the ability to sort of defeat these people, but also there was an element of entertainment there, because if you just beat somebody in 5 seconds, which most of these wrestlers would have been able to do, you're never ever going to get another challenger from the audience again, and your show's finished. So you had to kind of take them to sort of 10 minutes, and it's this sort of strange thing where you're having this match, but on one side it's real, the guy from the audience really is trying to do his best to win. On the other side, it's entertainment. The guy who is the trained professional wrestler is trying to kind of drag it out, make it exciting, whilst completely controlling what's happening.
I've got a feeling health and safety wouldn't allow that these days. But what about the wrestlers in 2018? Who should we be looking out for?
There's a lot of guys who are on the ITV thing, and the thing to remember when you're watching this ITV and sort of looking at the great wrestlers there is that maybe sort of the 50 top 100 wrestlers in Britain today, there's probably about 40% of them are on ITV. So you've got guys like Will Ospreay, I think is going to really stand out. He's a real sort of high flyer and athlete. You've got guys like Dave Mastiff, who's kind of the modern version of the Giant Haystacks, but with sort of, the Giant Haystacks character and the sort of, imposing physical appearance, but with a sort of 2018 level of athleticism. But at the same time, there's also a lot of these wrestlers who are unfortunately not able to appear on ITV because they're signed to World Wrestling Entertainment in the United States, who are kind of running their own shows. And it's a bit of a battle going on between these two groups, which is great news for the wrestlers because it's maybe 50 years or so since there's been so many wrestlers in Britain making a full-time living from this. And that's the real thing that really makes the British scene so good now. So many guys are able to work full-time, wrestle every night, which means they get better so much more quickly than sort of smaller groups in the States where people might be wrestling once or twice a month.
Yeah, I love the name Dave Mastiff, by the way. That is a fantastic name for a wrestler. And you're right. I mean, it's almost like it's gone full circle. It's almost like it's part of British culture because actually there's a pub not far from Rock Sport Radio here. And there's a lady who who works behind the bar who also kind of doubles up at the weekend as a wrestler. So it's both male and female. There's also a guy called Grado from Glasgow who is kind of popular in these parts. And we think that he might be popping up on the show as well. How has WWE reacted to this news?
Well, they've sort of accelerated their plans. They've run several shows in Britain with primarily UK talent. And in the last couple of months, they've announced they're going to have sort of a full-time UK division that will be putting together a TV show. They're still trying to decide whether or not they can try and get that on a regular TV station, like sort of a Sky or a satellite channel, or show it on WWE Network, which is their sort of streaming service, their kind of wrestling version of Netflix. So there's kind of real momentum there. And I say it's the best thing for the business to kind of have this competition between the two because it's giving these guys this break. So it's great to see. And also a lot of the old World of Sport era wrestlers and the ones who were sort of in the years after it went off TV are now heavily involved with WWE. So William Regal, who's known as Steve Regal on the TV here, is pretty much the head talent scout. He's literally going right around the world. He goes to China, India, South America, looking for new recruits. Robbie Brookside, who was one of the big stars of the last few years on TV and really kind of held it all together in like the 1990s to try and keep it modernised, kind of keep the British scene alive. He's one of the top trainers over there, and they've just hired Johnny Moss, who's a wrestler, and even the great Johnny Saint has just come back from 6 months in the United States training the sort of British and American wrestlers to wrestle for WWE, and he's now become the general manager, which is sort of an on-screen role of the UK division in Britain.
Finally, can you tell us a little bit more about your book, Have a Good Week Till Next Week?
Yeah, so this is a collection of articles I wrote for Fighting Spirit magazine, which is the biggest print magazine in Europe for wrestling. You can get it in any branch of WH Smith's. And for about 6 years, we've been profiling the stars of the World of Sport era. Everybody from Giant Haystacks to Tom Thumb, Adrian Street to William Regal. And what we've done is, wherever possible, if they're still alive, we've gone and interviewed the wrestlers, talked about their career in the ring, talked about sort of their real lives, kind of, their sort of, if they had day jobs, for life on the road. And also, for the first time, a lot of these guys are now talking about kind of the behind-the-scenes politics, sort of the matchmaking of how it was decided who was going to win, which wrestlers really did get along in real life, which ones really did have a sort of a rivalry. Where wrestlers have passed away, like greats like Billy Robinson, Giant Haystacks, Jackie Pallow. We've talked to a lot of people who've worked with them over the years, so kind of really got a real insight into kind of the amazing characters that were in British wrestling, because particularly in the 50s and the 60s when it was first on TV, society was a sort of a bit more straight-laced. A lot of these characters really kind of stood out. They were outlandish. And sort of their interactions with the public were, absolutely amazing. I think my favourite story, there was a wrestler called King Kong Kirk, who's a real big, like, very scary kind of looking guy. And he used to be into CB radio because these wrestlers would be driving across the country sort of late at night and, kind of bored. So they get into the CB radio, and his nickname was Chicken Legs. And what he would used to do was say, it's Chicken Legs calling here, and then he'd kind of get into arguments with these truckers, and the truckers would be saying, that's it, I want it out with you, pull over at the next services, we're going to have it out. And of course, they get out expecting to see this, little chicken legs guy was kind of their imagination of what they're going to see. And this, 30-stone, bald-headed, muscular guy would get out and make, would panic.
And Ken Walton was the guy that said, have a good week, till next week.
That's great. Yeah, he was an amazing commentator, and probably in many ways you could say was one of the most important people in the success of British wrestling, because as I said, it was covered as a legitimate sport. And his job there was to kind of commentate in a way that was entertaining, that put over the storylines, put over the characters, but also kind of treated it in the same way as a legitimate sport. So you always kind of at least had that, even if not everybody literally believed what they were seeing, they were able to suspend their disbelief and kind of give it that air of credibility.
And the transatlantic side of it helped. I think was he a Canadian? Ken Walton? That's
right, yeah, and he's also, I believe he grew up in Egypt. His father was sort of in the diplomatic service. He kind of had this accent, but we say mid-Atlantic because it's kind of hard to put down to anywhere, and was this very distinctive voice.
Yeah, fantastic. John, it's been a pleasure talking to you, bringing back some memories of certainly my childhood on a Saturday afternoon, and I hope the reboot works. I hope things come around again, because things tend to go in cycles. I'll try and get a hold of your book as well. Have a good week till next week. Thanks very much for talking to us, John Lister.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, John. Cheers. There's John Lister there, and if you want to find out more about the great event that is British wrestling, have a good week till next week. It's out now. That's a new book by John Lister.
Love music, live sport with Alex Horsburgh on Rock Sport Radio.